Pleasure.
surely, like the vaccine rollout target that's been delayed and now really has an open-ended term instead of in terms of a date, Qantas is going to need to adjust its plans for overseas travel to resume.
Look, yes, you would think so. It's very, very difficult for them because, when it comes to resuming international travel, there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to the aircraft they've got to bring back out of hibernation. 787s of Jetstar, you've got A330s of Qantas's and some 787s that are in the Californian desert. So there's a lot of work to be done from a logistics point of view. There's a lot of work to be done from a pilot training point of view. And of course, it's very important for them to put a line in the sand and say, well, look, from that date we expect. There's several elements to it. Number one, Qantas is extending the change dates without penalty, so passengers can book with some sort of surety that yes, if we can't travel, we can defer and we won't have a penalty. That's one of the ways of dealing with this. Another element to this is obviously the New Zealand. The Tasman is going to be a very big travel market. I mean, for New Zealand, 40% of their visitors are from Australia. So it's a huge. We're the biggest group that go to New Zealand. So the Trans-Tasman part will be a big part of their, if you like, international operations, and also that may extend out to the Pacific Islands as well, and possibly Singapore. So travel bubbles may well sort of cushion the blow to any sort of delay to long-range international travel. But yes, it is very, very confusing and a lot of uncertainty at the moment, which makes planning very, very difficult.
And Geoff, is it expected that there will actually be an appetite for overseas travel once those borders do reopen?
Look, I think the appetite is absolutely there. And when we consider, for instance, Australians love to go to the United States, and all of a sudden, United States, which was one of the worst countries impacted by the coronavirus, they're on track to have everybody vaccinated by June, and that will suddenly, hopefully, become one of the safest places to go. The United Kingdom, on the flip side, they're well on that flip side of the world, I should say. They're well and truly down the track on the vaccination trail, and yes, United Kingdom could become a really high priority, as it always has been for Australians. Europe less so. So the appetite will return once people are convinced that those countries are safe. Now, whether we get a hiccup with only people who are vaccinated being able to travel, that's another thing again, and that's another issue which has yet to be addressed. Mr. Alan Joyce, the CEO of Qantas, has said basically for international travel, unless you're vaccinated, you can't travel on our aircraft. That could certainly slow the travel, the return to international travel, if we're still having problems in Australia getting people vaccinated.
So along with that idea of a vaccine passport, is there also an expectation among airlines, do you think, that we will start to treat travellers from different countries differently when it comes to allowing flights and also quarantine rules, depending on how their home country is handling the virus and how their vaccination rollout's going?
Oh, look, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind and other analysts that I have spoken to and airline CEOs, there's definitely going to be a very great patchwork of travel around the world. We're going to have travel bubbles like we have with New Zealand. We're going to have travel corridors, maybe between Australia and the United Kingdom. You're going to have countries like Brazil that will be simply black banned because of the issue is people are not being vaccinated fast enough. People are dying in record numbers, but the other issue is variants of the coronavirus, and serious variants are evolving, one in Brazil at the moment. And countries are going to sort of basically say, if you're from Brazil, you've travelled through Brazil, or you're holding a Brazilian passport, for instance, you're simply not coming into our country, end of story. So yes, it's going to be a patchwork of situations around the world, depending on the local conditions that apply.
So all of that obviously means that airlines are going to continue struggling for some time yet. What does that mean for us in terms of consumers, travellers, for airfares down the track? I mean, once those international borders open up again, what are we looking at in terms of the pricing we'll see for those flights?
Well, that's a very good question. I know the airlines would like to triple the price to try and make up for all the losses, but the reality is pricing is going to be a major tool in their efforts to get people flying again, as we have seen with these government-sponsored seat sales and airlines' own seat sales. They've had record responses to those seat sales. It's almost like there's a graph, the fear versus price graph. You know, when the price is low enough, the fear disappears and they'll travel. We found that with Cathay Pacific back in the SARS days when they were SARS Central in Hong Kong. They put when SARS was officially over, they put crazy fares into the marketplace and filled their planes overnight. So yes, the pricing is going to be a major tool. What that will mean is that yes, we're going to get cheap fares, but that will it'll just simply mean that it'll be much longer before airlines return to reasonable profitability, and you might be looking at 2024, 2025 before airlines start to recover properly, which means we're going to need more government assistance, because more government assistance is being shelved out overseas. The Canadians just did a $6 billion deal with the Canadian government with Air Canada. Lufthansa's got more funds from the German government. So there's assistance flowing. I know the Australian government, of course, has stepped up to the market with more assistance, but that assistance is probably going to have to go on into 2022 at least.
And just finally, Geoff, what about interstate travel? How far off are we from getting back to the sort of frequency of flights we saw in the pre-pandemic interstate travel schedule?
I think the eastern seaboard is leading the way, and certainly the travel is getting more robust. I know the CEO of Qantas, Alan Joyce, is going to make an announcement about how the domestic travel is going on Thursday. That's an announcement to look forward to, Thursday morning, 8:15 in Sydney. Travel to the west coast of Australia is possibly not as robust because people are still fearing shutdowns. So there's still that nervousness about the shutdowns, and that will be an impediment to travel for some time until people get comfortable that the shutdowns are essentially over.